How do you stop ruminating on regrets? I decided to make this video in response to a commenter who said, can you talk more about trying to change the past? This seems to be where a lot of us get stuck, constant ruminations about regrets and things we wish we'd done differently. And I thought that was a great suggestion. And as a 58-year-old guy, I can relate to this. I have regrets too. Things I've done that I shouldn't have, things that I didn't do that I wish I had. All the times I silence my inner voice instead of trusting myself. And I've tried to use those regrets in a healthy way to help me focus on being true to myself and have as few regrets as possible moving forward. And I don't believe it's ever too late to do that, but there are opportunities that have passed that I'll never get to do over. And although it's not nearly as frequent as it used to be, I still have moments where I beat myself up and start dwelling on past regrets. And I'll bet many of you struggle with this as well. And look, I know that a YouTube video isn't going to stop years of self-abusive rumination. That's not how it works. My hope is just to give you a place to start, a little bit of direction, because as much as you may believe you've screwed up beyond repair, so do millions of other men. You really aren't alone in trying to make peace with the version of yourself you believe you should have been. And if you're new here, welcome. My name's Jeff. I make videos for men over 40 who want to live a better second chapter. And some videos, such as this one, are probably going to be relevant for anyone, but I believe that aging makes a difference when it comes to regret, because as we get older, we have less time left, and we're also more likely to get stuck in a regret loop and basically give up on trying to move forward. So the first thing we need to understand is that regret itself is not the problem. Research actually shows that regret, when you process it in a healthy way, is one of the most useful emotions you have. It helps you learn. It gives you insight into what matters to you. It can motivate you to make different choices going forward. So the problem isn't regret. The problem is when regret turns into rumination. And there's a big difference between the two. Regret says, I made a mistake. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'll do differently going forward. And that has a natural endpoint. You feel the pain, extract the lesson, adjust course, and move on. Rumination is completely different. You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, replaying the same decision over and over, running through all the what ifs, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. And when this is happening, your brain is actually trying to undo the past through sheer mental effort. That's really what rumination is trying to do in this case. And of course, it never works. So you just get stuck in the same loop, the same thoughts, the same pain, but no resolution. It's like watching the same movie over and over again and hoping for a different ending. And here's what I've noticed, both in my own life and in working with other men. At some point, the rumination stops being about processing the regret. Instead, it becomes punishment. You start believing that if you just replay it enough, if you beat yourself up thoroughly enough, if you feel bad enough for it long enough, somehow that will count for something. Somehow that suffering will mean you're taking it seriously. Somehow it will earn you the right to move forward. And it's like you've handed yourself down a sentence. You've decided you don't deserve to be released until you've suffered enough, until you've paid your debt. But what's important to understand is that there is no amount of self-punishment that will undo what happened. There is no amount of rumination that will give you those years back. There's no threshold of suffering that, once crossed, magically grants you permission to start living again. And I know you understand that logically, but you might not have thought about it that way. And that sentence you're serving has no end date because you never defined what enough looks like. You just keep extending it year after year, decade after decade. And at some level, you may have thought about it as accountability, as being honest about your mistakes, as not letting yourself off the hook. But it's not really any of those things. It's really you abandoning yourself, deciding that you don't deserve to move forward or deserve to try again. That the best thing you can do with the rest of your life is to just keep punishing yourself for how you lived the first part. And I think that a lot of us do this without realizing it. We think we're processing our regrets when really we're just beating ourselves up with them over and over. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying the regret isn't legitimate. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel bad about things you wish you'd done differently. If you spent years missing your kid's childhood because you were always working, that's a real loss. If you stayed in a career that never fit because you were too afraid to risk anything different, those are years you don't get back. If you spent decades being who you thought you were supposed to be instead of who you actually are, that's something worth grieving. You can't just skip over it and pretend it doesn't matter. But there's a difference between feeling grief and using it to punish yourself. And somewhere along the way, a lot of us cross that line without noticing. And here's what can be sneaky about human behavior. We do what works for us on some level, even when it's self-destructive. There's always a reason we do things that we do. We're just not usually consciously aware of what that payoff is. And that's what can happen with years of self-punishing rumination about regret. The rumination serves a purpose. It becomes a way to avoid something even scarier than the pain of regret. If you stay focused on how badly you screwed up, if you keep your attention locked on everything you did wrong, you never have to risk doing something different now. You don't have to show up in your life today. You don't have to take a chance. You don't have to have the uncomfortable conversation. You don't have to admit that maybe you still want something. If your story is, I already blew it, it's too late for me, then you're off the hook. You don't have to try and risk failing again. You don't have to face the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you could still build something meaningful with whatever time you have left. And facing that possibility is terrifying, because what if you try and it doesn't work? What if you put yourself out there again and get hurt? What if you discover that you still don't have what it takes? So instead, you stay in the punishment loop. You keep replaying the past, and you tell yourself it's because you're being responsible, because you're facing what you did, because you're not one of those guys who just sweeps everything under the rug and pretends like it didn't happen. But here's the truth that's so easy for any of us to hide behind. Beating yourself up is easier than rebuilding your life. And staying stuck in regret is safer than risking new failure. That's probably why you do it. It doesn't make you more accountable. It just allows you to hide out in a state of misery. And it's even easier to get stuck here when we've convinced ourselves that this is the high road, that if we just punish ourselves long enough, eventually we'll have earned redemption. Eventually we'll have suffered enough to deserve a second chance. But it doesn't work that way. You're never going to wake up one day and feel like you've paid your dues because you're the one moving the goalposts. Every time you get close to feeling like you could move forward, you remind yourself of one more thing you did wrong, one more way you failed, one more reason you don't deserve to try again. And by doing this, you've turned your regret into a life sentence, and you're the only one keeping yourself locked up. So, what's your regret actually trying to tell you? It's not what you think. It's not trying to tell you that you're a failure or that it's too late. It's not even really about the past, at least probably not in the way you think it is. Your regret is pointing you toward what actually matters to you. The things you regret not doing weren't just random possibilities you missed. They represent something core to who you are. And if you regret missing your kid's childhood, that's telling you that presence and connection matters more than productivity. That being a father is more important to you than whatever you thought you were achieving by working all the time. If you regret staying in the wrong career, that's telling you that meaning matters. That spending your days doing something that aligns with who you actually are is worth more than security or status or other people's approval. The pain you're feeling is not supposed to be punishment. It's information. It's your authentic self trying to get your attention. It's been trying for years, maybe decades. It's not there as evidence that you're fundamentally flawed, that you don't deserve better, that you should just accept that you blew your chance. The key to moving forward involves a mindset shift. It means telling yourself a different story about what your regret means. It means chipping away at that story you've been telling yourself, that you've screwed up so badly that it's not worth trying anymore, or that you're not worthy of a better second chapter. That you're human, just like the rest of us, and we all make mistakes. Then ask yourself the question that actually matters. What's one small thing you could do today? Not next month, not when you feel like you've suffered enough, but today to honor what that regret is telling you. If connection matters, maybe today you reach out to one of your kids, not to apologize for the past or try to make up for lost time, just to be present now, even if it's just for 10 minutes. If meaning matters, maybe today you spend half an hour researching what it would actually take to make a career change. You're not committing to anything, you're just gathering information. You're just starting to ask what's actually possible instead of telling yourself it's too late. If authenticity matters, maybe today you have one honest conversation. You tell someone something true that you've been hiding, something that matters to you that you've been keeping to yourself because you're afraid of what they'll think. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It doesn't have to fix everything. It doesn't have to prove that you've learned your lesson or suffered enough or earned the right to try again. It just has to be something real that involves you speaking your truth. Studies on end-of-life regrets show that the most common regrets among older men are working too much, missing time with family and friends, and never pursuing their dreams. The final words of too many men are, "I wish I had." You can't undo what's done, but my hope for you is that you stop punishing yourself for it and stop using your past as a shield against your future. That you reignite that fire inside and decide that it's not too late and that you deserve a better future. Please like this video if it was helpful. Consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message. And consider subscribing if you're a guy over 40 who's ready to live a better second chapter. Have a great day.